Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello. Today we've got Jacob and Blake Morgan on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to have you here. I'm really excited. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of entrepreneurial things. Like I mentioned before we hit record, we can take this in any direction at all. But why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick for the audience?
Why don't you start, my dear?
So my name is Blake, and about 7 years ago, I was laid off from a Fortune 100 company, and I was so devastated. I was crying, Jacob, what am I going to do? And I realized in that moment that I never wanted to leave my destiny in somebody else's hands ever again. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. And I've been speaking, writing books, selling content for the past 7 years. And now Jacob and I are collaborating on our own new business, which is the Be Your Own Boss podcast. So we have a lot to talk about also because we're married entrepreneurs, which is super weird. And we have 2 kids and 2 dogs. So it's never, ever boring.
Yeah. And the fact that we're both wearing green was totally unplanned, by the way.
Was it? I was like, is it St. Patty's Day or?
No, I had blue on. I spilled coffee on my shirt as I was walking up to sit down for the podcast. So.
No worries. It looks very good. I mean, I like to match sometimes, with my girlfriend, but it's sometimes just like, oh, we're both wearing maroon or whatever the color is, so.
Right.
Very cool.
My journey started a little bit before Blake's. So I've been an entrepreneur for around 15 years now.
Okay.
And mine started not because I got laid off, but because I was actually very excited to have a corporate job after college. And I worked really hard in school. I double majored in economics and psychology. Honors, I had like a 3.8, 3.9 GPA. So I thought corporate world is going to be great. Super excited. And I always thought my path would be climbing a corporate ladder and getting an MBA and then, who knows what, right? Staying in the corporate world somewhere. And that all came crashing down for me very quickly when my first job out of college, I was promised I'd be doing all these really cool things. And instead I was stuck doing data entry and cold calling and PowerPoint presentations.
Yep.
Pivotal moment for me came when the CEO comes out of his office and he makes me go get him a cup of coffee. And I thought, you know what, this sucks.
Yes.
So I started Googling things like, how do you make money online? How do you become an entrepreneur? What is an entrepreneur? And 15 years ago, that's when my journey began. And it was actually funny because I was an entrepreneur while Blake had a full-time job. And you actually liked some of your, I hated all my full-time jobs, but Blake actually liked some of hers. And until, of course, she had the rug pulled out from under her, so to speak, and got her manager swapped out and got laid off. And
right.
We both became, I think, over time, disenfranchised with the whole corporate world.
Yeah, that's a great story. And that's something that a lot of people can share, right? I mean, I think one of the things, like the straws that broke the camel's back for me, I remember a senior supply chain leader that kind of was like my boss's boss when I worked in oil and gas, made me do 9 revisions of a one slide PowerPoint for, like, I would do something. He's like, oh, remove this, like change that. Okay, put it into a quadrant, put this, change the axes name or whatever. And literally I was just like, are you serious? This is a 1-page thing. The VP is going to look at it for 2 seconds. The information's there. And I think the other thing too was like over the weekend, he's like, okay, make these final changes. And this was already like V8 and I was already losing it. And then on Monday I see him and I'm like, how's it going? And he's like, oh, I'm just a little anxious. I'm waiting for that slide, like assuming I was going to do it over the weekend. And I was like, no. I would have done version 3 or 4, but version 9, that's not happening on a Saturday. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So it's funny how so many entrepreneurs have that story where you get excited, you get motivated, you get that dream job, and that dream turns into a nightmare very quickly. Or maybe you even love your job, but nothing's guaranteed. They can tell you smiling to your face, don't worry, your job's secure. This is all great. 2 weeks later, you're laid off because they couldn't really tell you. I have friends who are in oil and gas again. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing your journey. And so it looks like you got started first. And of course, Blake jumped in afterwards. How did that feel for you, Blake, whenever you were working and you saw the freedom and flexibility that he had? Did that kind of like get you a little jealous, or did you not mind going into the office at that time?
You were commuting too, weren't you?
No, I was mostly working from home.
But like
that's nice.
When you were at the other company, weren't you going into the city?
Yeah, I mean, I used to commute. The moment for me that I was really thinking about yesterday, actually, because I was looking at an old picture of me and Jacob in Prague. And we had gone to this, I had taken off of work to go with him he was speaking for the president of Microsoft Eastern Europe or Microsoft Prague.
In the Czech Republic.
Yeah. And this woman, she was just so special, so neat. She took us out for dinner, and I had never really been at an executive dinner with a bunch of C-level people. And I was like, I think Jacob was a little embarrassed by me because I was like, wow, this is so nice. Thank you. Like, he was like,
and they're like, this is
cool.
every day for us, right?
Yeah, I wasn't being cool at all. And I remember sitting in the audience, and I can still picture it now with the table rounds and seeing him on the stage, about 250, 300 people.
You thought how handsome I was. And
I was like, I can do that. Like,
oh, thanks.
Like, I know this guy, he's a goofball. Like, I can do what he's doing. I think that was one of the pivotal moments for me, just having a front seat to Jacob's success in his career. And he coached me and taught me how to charge more. And my first keynote, I got paid $10,000. It seemed like a fortune. I was so nervous. I don't think I slept a minute the night before.
Which one was your first one?
In San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, yeah. I went with you to that
Verint or some tech company. But I mean, he helped me see what was possible. And I'm never going to look back, because for me, the best antidote to challenges, even just as a woman and a mom, is self-employment. It's really the only option where your destiny is not in someone else's hands. You don't have to worry about getting people to like you or doing work on a Saturday doing version 9 of an oil PowerPoint. Like, you're not going to get any credit for. I mean, that's just like thankless. And you have one life to live. Why don't you just go after your big audacious goals, even if they're scary?
I actually don't even remember what it's like to commute to company. Do you remember, like, because you used to wake up early? I don't even remember when you had time to exercise, when did you do? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
My girlfriend, we just, like I just mentioned, we moved to Denver, and her previous job, I mean, it was like more of like a startup feel. She's in accounting, right? So tax season, craziness. Literally, she'd be gone from 8 a.m. to like 9 p.m. on a Friday. And she'd text me like, hey, I can't do dinner. We're finishing up this client's things. And I'm like, are you serious? And I was already the entrepreneur. I'm like, didn't do anything at all during the day because it had all been done from virtual assistants. And I'm like, seriously, like, my one thing today we can't go do because of this job. And now her time's opened up with the commuting on top of that, right? It gets very tiresome. And I could see, like, she never cries, and she's probably gonna be mad that I'm talking about this, but I saw her cry like 2 times. We've been together for 4 years. The only 2 times were when she came home at like 9 or 9:30, and she was just burnt out, couldn't take it, felt like she wasn't pulling her weight on the team. So that takes a really big toll on you. But like you guys mentioned there, that's a huge nugget, that you're never going to get that kind of freedom like you do when you work for yourself. And we only have one life. So why not? It's scary at first. It really is, when you quit that job and you change your LinkedIn to like entrepreneur or whatever your new title is, which typically, like, you don't even believe that title yet because you're so new at it. Yeah. Did you guys have that feeling when you finally embraced, your LinkedIn and you changed everything on your profiles?
I don't even remember.
I think your job predated
how old?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think my job predated. I was just
old.
I don't remember.
2006.
Yeah, I don't remember what my first job. I wonder if LinkedIn has like a way to search what your job titles have been over the years.
I think when we started,
you changed yours though.
We were much more self-conscious about, like, when you first start, you just really want to seem like big time. And you really want to get those client examples. I've worked with this company. I've been doing it this long. And you kind of,
fluff it up a little bit,
puff up your feathers.
And then as you get older and you do this for longer and you realize this is like the long game, this is not a short-term thing, then you become less self-conscious of how people see you. And because you have that experience, like for us, we've actually physically flown places, been on stages. I've personally been told that my work is garbage and had to go work on myself and get a coach to be better. And then I was better. And then I started getting all this recognition. So like when you put in the time, I think you don't really care as much about how you're perceived and like your LinkedIn. I mean, honestly, I have a ridiculous title, like customer experience futurist. I mean, I've been laughed at. In fact, somebody sent me an email that literally, can I curse on this podcast?
Yeah, you can curse.
He said, customer experience futurist, fuck right off. Like, I would imagine it's a British guy with a British accent, because it was
that just makes it sound a little friendlier in a way. Like, okay,
maybe he was being nice to you.
Maybe.
I don't think so. Anyway, but the point is, like, we just don't care. Like we're all in, we're married, our
that.
family's involved. Like we just don't really care what other people think. And
soon
I think that's what is
going to be
required.
employed with us. She's going to be 5 years old soon. Soon we'll get her.
No.
Have a futurist title as well.
Maybe she'll do the podcast editing for us when she's 6.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be way better than like having to mow the lawn or do the dishes or something. In my opinion, I'd rather have edited podcasts as a kid instead of, load the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's so cool to hear your story about that though, because you're so right that as you do it longer, you get more competent. You don't really care. I guess that's why I see like the old people in the gym that just like walk around naked in the locker room. Like they no longer care because they've just done it so long. They're like, whatever, I'm just going to hold a towel in my hand and like walk to the shower naked.
That's not going to be me. I don't even go into the locker room at gym.
I see that all the time. And I'm like, will that become me one day? And I could kind of see it with this is weird talking about my dad after that. Cause like, don't picture that, but I could see my dad becoming the senile old man a little bit, like where he's like a little grouchy and he just says some negative stuff. And I'm like, looking at my girlfriend, like, please don't let that ever be me. Like I want to be positive, optimistic. And I guess when we surround ourselves with people like that, I'm sure you guys do that as well. You probably are in a different bubble altogether. Like, can you talk a little bit about who you surround yourself with, your network? Has that evolved over the years as you've kind of grown in your businesses?
I'm sorry, but I feel like Jacob has to talk about his dad for like a second.
Sure. Like I said, if you're comfortable, any direction.
It's such a big
presence. I throw my parents under the bus quite often on the show. So
no, he's great. He's just a character.
I have Russian immigrant parents, so that'll give you some context.
Okay, cool.
I don't know. Would you call him a curmudgeon? He's not.
He just doesn't care. He just has his own philosophy on life and he makes up his own phrases and we were talking with we had an immigrant entrepreneur on our podcast and she was saying how she'll take American colloquialisms or phrases and they're always like a little bit off. Like his dad will say he's photogenetic instead of photogenic.
Or he'll say things like, I'm speaking allegorically when he means to see allegorically. And
right.
Like things are just a little tiny bit off.
Oh, I know how it goes. Yeah. My mom's from Mexico and I always thought spaghetti was like espagueti. Like I kind of learned a few words wrong because she just didn't know. Right. So
yeah, I think both of our parents are,
well, your dad's he's really special. He really doesn't care what people think. He loves to have his shirt off and no sunblock and no hat at like soccer games.
They're like hardened by life. I'd say our parents are, they're kind of like the piece of dough that's been sitting in the sun for too long. And it's just become like this really crunchy, like hardened material. Our parents are. I mean, they're 70. What do you expect? They went through all this stuff in their years. So
for sure.
They've earned the right to say what the hell they want.
So Jacob's dad is really awesome. He's actually an aerospace engineer, but he definitely has his own, like your dad.
He just does what he wants. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Who do we, Jacob and I have been through a lot together. I wouldn't say we're the best example of like having a big community of friends, because honestly, during COVID, a lot of our best friends moved to Texas, Denver, and where we live, a lot of people come here for their career to San Francisco, and then they leave because it's quite expensive to live here and they move on. So that's been a little painful, honestly, is just friendship and like trying to find meaning and friendship in life offline, out of work. So we're actually working on that, trying to make new friends as well. Because honestly, it's been a little painful with COVID. Our best friends that we were quarantining with moved to Dallas, and that was just really painful.
Yeah, but I think in general with our network, Blake and I are probably our biggest network.
Supporters.
In terms of supporters. And it's a little bit easier because we're both in the same space, so to speak. So we're constantly trying to help each other out. We talk about our day. We try to encourage each other. I don't think we have really many people outside of our network that we do that with, maybe occasionally family members. We've been
burned, Chris. When I was young, like by people that would seem like friends and then they just want something.
Yeah.
And then it's like hurtful because I'm so sensitive that when I was younger, especially, I'd be like, this older, successful businesswoman wants to be my friend and she wants to mentor me. And then it's like, can you give me this? Can you
make this connection for me? Yeah. And then you just have like a bad taste in your mouth. Like, well, did they really want to be my friend at all? Or was this kind of just part of their plan?
Yeah.
But I think in general, I'm more, I don't know.
You don't need friends.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it like in such a harsh way. It's not that I don't need friends, but I tend to be a little bit more reserved and not so open with everything that I share with everybody.
I think you're super reserved and you're super close to the vest. He doesn't share.
Yeah, I keep things a little bit close to the vest. I mean, so I don't know if we necessarily have a huge positive network, but I think we also do a pretty good job of making sure we don't surround ourselves with negative people who bring us down. Like I can't I can't think of anybody in my life, and maybe you had some friends who I won't name in the past who you thought were negative, but I don't really have anybody in my life who's like super negative as a friend. I mean, I have a couple close friends that I talk to occasionally. You know, they don't live here, but nobody's always like, oh man, things are terrible. Things are bad. Don't do this. You can't do that.
I think I'm Jacob's best friend.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
His family is his best friends, but
we don't really have, I don't think we have negative people that we surround ourselves with. Like,
we don't really need, it's terrible, but I mean, we need people we don't. The thing is, Chris, we have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. So like,
and you stay pretty busy, right?
We're so busy. And then with COVID, everything got so weird this year with friends.
Right.
You know, we can't really see you outside. It's just,
we have a lot of acquaintances, but maybe not many good friends.
But I think COVID has, I'm introverted. So that means I'll keep like 2 to 3 best friends around me. And then I have other people, but I really like to just have a few really good friends, and they moved away. Yeah. And then, so we're kind of at this point where we know we probably need more of a community, but the world is just starting to kind of open up again. So we're hoping to have, because I need community and Jacob doesn't really. That's always a challenge.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, but I think that it's also a little more unique because you guys work together with each other versus like my girlfriend, like I mentioned, she already got a job here in Denver. She's gone all day. And so I don't see her till she's off work. And fortunately, she's not getting home at 10 o'clock anymore. It's like 4:15. But still, we do our different things. And a lot of my friends echo this, like where I feel alone, like the Pablo Escobar meme, like I'm just walking around alone all day. I have all this time to myself. I do a few Facebook Lives and podcasts. And then when we come home, it's like, we don't really talk about I'm like, how was your day? But she doesn't really care that I did 2 Facebook Live videos and a podcast, and I don't really care to hear about accounting because we're just not interested in those things. So I think you guys have that unique setup where you can talk to each other and you can confide in each other about these things that you work on together, which is actually really cool. I guess just drawing the line might be a little like, well, when do we talk about business? When do we actually like go on date night? I've heard that can be a challenge sometimes because that's hard enough to draw the line of personal life versus family versus, date night or whatever. So can you guys talk about that a little bit? Do you have any like rules for yourself? Because I think that would help a lot of people in the audience who are struggling with when to draw that line.
Well, we're doing a date.
Be honest, if you have a hard time doing that too.
Well, we're doing a date day on Saturday, so we're gonna be. So
let's be honest.
Mother's Day weekend is coming up, so we're gonna
tell them honestly what I wanted for Mother's Day.
She wanted to do a little bit of spring cleaning, and then I wanted to have a
day with no kids in the house where I could like figure out if we're gonna redo our closet and like fix like. I want to be honest and real with your audience that it is really hard. Like it is. I am tired a lot, and it is a constant challenge to create boundaries to make sure both of us feel we're getting our needs met. Like it is nonstop, but everything we do, we try really, really hard. So whether that's helping our kids, our business, fitness and staying healthy, with people in our lives, having integrity. I think Jacob and I both have what is called growth mindsets where we just care a lot about everything, but it's definitely a constant battle to find that balance. And I wouldn't say we've really achieved that. I mean, we have little kids. So if you think about it, we work our butts off when we're at work, which, we're not ignoring our kids at night and working, we work normal hours pretty much. But then when we're done working, we have little kids, like even our 1-year-old, he physically needs to be carried around. He can't even really crawl and fed. And yesterday he had explosive diarrhea.
TMI.
Oh no.
It's a hard time in our lives. And I just want to be honest, because I think this whole sugar coating, like if you look at our personas online, you might think, oh, like they seem to have it all, but it's grueling and it's exhausting. And honestly, being a young mom, working mom with little kids, it's really, really tiring. And you don't get a lot of time for yourself.
Yeah. For me, I look at it instead of trying to find balance, it's just trying to integrate it in a way that's most effective.
Right.
I don't really believe in the idea of work-life balance. It's more like work-life integration and how do you fit it together.
Yes.
So there are certainly days where, like yesterday, for example, I barely did any work. I played a lot of chess. I did chess stuff because I was tired. Fridays, I don't have any meetings scheduled, so I'm not going to do anything tomorrow. I'm going to get a haircut and honestly probably do more chess stuff. I'm wearing a chess shirt. I mean, you can see where this is going.
Have you guys seen the Queen's Gambit? I think everyone's into chess after that. It was great,
exactly.
Great show.
Yeah. So we try to integrate things a little bit better, where we try to pay more attention to how we're feeling, our moods. If we need time off, to take it. If we feel energized, we can work. Yeah, it's just trying to integrate it in the way that makes the most sense for the way you're feeling and the family dynamic. But the idea of complete balance, of separating one from the other, I don't think really exists anymore.
Yeah.
You're not working from home, you're living from work, as they say. So I think it's been an interesting.
Very true. I guess it gets difficult that's something we all struggle with. I was actually listening to your most recent podcast as well earlier on some of the tips and tricks for like focusing just on the stuff right now instead of thinking about all the things you have to do right in the future. Yep. And it gets very overwhelming at times. And I'm curious to know as well, are you guys also doing your own businesses separately in addition to the new podcast together that's still running same as before?
Oh yeah. I mean, most of our time is spent in our own businesses.
Okay. And then you come together for the show and the podcast recordings?
Yep. Yeah. So I have my own business. Blake has her own business. We're both speakers. We're both authors. We both have our own podcasts, our own separate YouTube show, basically our own separate everything.
Yep.
And we only recently, within the last year, decided to come together to create the Be Your Own Boss podcast, to basically share everything that we've learned over the years on entrepreneurship with a totally different audience, and basically building an entire separate brand and business from scratch, where we interview a lot of entrepreneurs, people such as yourself, to share insights and ideas. So it's been an interesting new project for us. But yeah, this is our third business together. We still have our whole separate ones that we're running.
Very cool. So that also adds an added layer of complexity to how much time do I spend on, our own business versus the podcast? And then how do we outreach to guests, and how many shows are we recording at a time? There's so many things that we could do, but that doesn't mean that we should necessarily do them all. Right. So Very interesting. What would be one of the things that you both think are one of your biggest challenges right now? I know obviously there's a lot going on, little kids, COVID doesn't help. Everyone's at home, but I would love to hear maybe one of the challenges that you guys are facing and maybe how you're working to overcome it.
Yeah, for us, 2020 was a year of work. Honestly, I never really took maternity leave. It was a grind.
I think literally like after you gave birth to Noah, weren't you?
I had an assistant. I had a woman running my business.
Speaking engagement.
No, I had a woman that I had set her up and prepaid her so I could take at least like 6 weeks off, and she would run my business. And she ended up being a sociopath that
took the money,
stole the money, disappeared, like very strange scenario. She's still using my name to scam other people, and there's like not that much I can do. So 10 days after I gave birth, I found myself back in the weeds of running my business, because I'm not going to let my business, fail.
Apart. Yeah.
So, it's hard. You do the best you can. I mean, we hired a night nurse to help with the baby during the nights because I knew I needed rest. And I'm turning 37 this month. So that's the beauty of building things and having a family when you're older, because you have more resources to get help. But I would say that 2020 was a year of work for us. And honestly, I hope I'm answering your
biggest challenge.
The biggest challenge
and how you're doing it. So you're getting help to take care of the kids and everything at night, to make sure you sleep. That's great. Yeah. You're hiring help and you're actively seeking people, hopefully non-sociopaths, but you never know until you make the hire.
New, amazing people, which I feel like I earned and attracted by so many years of working with maybe people that weren't good fits. But the big challenge for us, I think, is just finding joy, meaning, and balance, because we work so much, whether we're serving our children or serving our businesses, or trying to even stay in shape. That feels like a chore sometimes.
I have a totally different challenge.
It can just feel like a treadmill. for me, the challenge is constantly like, well, find things that bring you joy right now. But I don't have a lot of extra time. So it's like, well, what are those things that bring me joy? I don't really know. I don't have hobbies. So I'm just being really real. And hopefully some of your audience, they're working moms, they can kind of relate. Like, yeah, it's super hard to find time for yourself and find joy and meaning. And, it's been a long year. So how do we now kind of get back to the life simple pleasures and just take a breath?
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Jacob? What's been one of your challenges?
So my biggest challenge is not trying to create work for myself.
Work for work's sake.
Yeah. I mean, as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can probably relate to it, but when you're an entrepreneur, you feel like anytime you have free time, you should be working.
Yes.
And so if you have, like tomorrow, I don't have any meetings scheduled. So technically I could do whatever I want. But
you're going to feel guilty I'm playing chess.
Exactly. So in my mind, I'm like trying to create, okay, well, you should think about another course. Maybe you should brainstorm some upcoming book ideas. You should write some video scripts or ideas for yourself. You should create some image quote. And
it never ends.
Yeah. And I give myself a full day of work when I actually have no work to do. So for me, the biggest challenge is being able to be okay with free time and using that free time to do what I want.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to make things for myself, because I think that's actually what causes a lot of stress, at least for me sometimes. Sometimes I get stressed and anxious because I feel like I should be doing something and I don't know what I should be doing.
Yes.
But the reality is I shouldn't be doing anything. I should just be, not working for a little bit, and that's okay.
I have that same exact problem. Like if I had a problem right now, it's that I just have too much free time where I don't have that purpose. And I'm not sure what my hobbies are, similar to what you mentioned, Blake, is I don't even know what my hobbies are. I used to play the drums forever, and now I didn't even bring my drum set here when we moved, and I don't really care to play. And so what am I interested in? Chess may be a good one to pick up, start playing computer chess while I'm here alone, or teach my dog how to play.
Exactly.
But one thing I wanted to mention, just going off of what you just said, because I just had a call with my therapist / life coach yesterday, and she mentioned that thing is called egocentric anxiety, where you're always thinking, because I was like, it is a form of anxiety where you're kind of making yourself nervous by thinking of all the things that you could be doing that you're not doing. Because I had that same thing. It's hard for me to just sit in the sauna or go to the hot tub without doing a voice memo of ideas to myself to do later. I'm like, Chris, sit here for 30 minutes. You don't need to check your emails.
Shut up and relax, damn it.
How do you stop your brain, that kind of thing. So I'm just gosh, I'm having that exact same struggle. And I know a lot of people in my audience can resonate because we do all this stuff to buy ourselves free time, but we can't enjoy the free time sometimes because we're thinking about other things that we could do. So it's a vicious cycle that we need to put a rubber band and snap it every time that happens. Maybe. I'm not sure what the solution is.
Yeah. I mean, at least for me, one of the ways that I'm trying to work on it is just kind of being mindful of it. And so, for example, if I know that I have free time and I want to work, I have to be mindful and say, okay, Jacob, do you really have work to do? Or are you making it for yourself?
Right.
And just having a little conversation with myself. And if I say, you know what, you really do have free time, it's just having that dialogue. It's almost like I'm having trying to convince myself that it's okay to relax.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're mindful that is what you're starting to do and you're aware of it, then you can have a conversation with yourself and you can force yourself to relax.
Let's talk more about the mental, the therapist stuff that we were talking about. How would you recommend, or do you have any advice or experience on how to address some of those things? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, Blake, Jacob, chime in.
Yeah,
however.
There's a couple things, Chris. One, you mentioned that when you're alone in the jacuzzi or the sauna, you have trouble relaxing your mind. Mm-hmm. And I also struggle with that. What's crazy is, I'll call it energy. My energy, it's one thing, it drives me nuts because I don't want to call it anxiety, but I mean, yeah, I guess it is anxiety. It also is probably the only reason I'm successful is because I wake up in the morning and I have ants in my pants. I'm like, what am I going to tackle today? And I have a lot of energy, but
she's up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
okay,
but that's
cool.
not always good, but I've channeled it. But sometimes I have trouble shutting off my brain. So there's so many things that I do throughout the day and into the evening to just keep myself centered and doing it right now and focused. And one of those things is just your breathing and Jacob teases me sometimes.
I don't do any of this stuff.
I have a very dramatic kind of he'll hear me sighing And I always tell them, like, don't take it personally, because it actually means that I'm just releasing, negative energy or stress. So your breathing is so important to your mental health. And so every morning I meditate for 10 minutes after I have my coffee or with my coffee. And I walk the dogs and I do gratitudes on my phone. So every morning I do voice memos while I walk the dogs at 6 a.m. And I talk about very specifically something I'm grateful for that day, because it's hard for me to just sit and like write in a journal.
Yeah.
And but starting my day with those 3 small things, so meditation, the walking, and the speaking into my phone of my gratitudes, I think it really has helped with my entire day. And if you can just do those little things, everyone says, oh yeah, I do my gratitudes, but literally doing it every single morning, saying one thing that you're grateful for, it's a game changer. And I really didn't do it. And I'm 30, almost 37, finally doing it. And I'm realizing that, unfortunately, I feel like I spent so much of my life being negative. I wasn't even aware of it. I come from Jewish Eastern European parents where I feel like it's a culture to be very negative, to be a bit paranoid. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not going to blame people. This sounds horrible, but I mean, you grow up when you're a little kid. I was thinking about this morning, and you're taught that, as Jews at a certain point, like we were hunted, your relatives were killed in concentration camps. Everybody's out to get you. Everyone hates Jews. Your parents and the community like raises you to be negative and paranoid. It's kind of in the culture, right? Cynical. And so to counter that, I'm just trying to be more aware of how negative I am, how I show up for my family, how I treat my husband, the things I say out loud. Because if you're not self-aware of them, I think it can be very dangerous. So I'm really working on those things even now with the success that I've achieved, still continuing to be a novice and understanding that even with certain things in life, I'm very much a novice every single day.
Yeah. So it's just about getting better every day. But something that you mentioned there as well is there's so much of that programming and like the software that gets uploaded into our minds as children. And we don't even know about a lot of this stuff. Like we just assume that's how it is, right? Because I talk about that too. My parents, my dad's from India, mom's from Mexico. They've seen the poverty firsthand. My mom's from a family of 12. Like her dad died when she was 9, right? So same thing, like very protective. And my mom was basically like the mom for her younger kids when her dad died, and literally so many siblings, and they had to go like get, I don't know, tortillas and beans and stuff down the street and that kind of thing. And my grandma only went to 3rd grade. So I don't blame them for having some of that scarcity mindset of like, oh, this is expensive. My dad tells me my grandpa used to like wash his hands with like the smallest amount of running water to save water.
Okay. I know you're going to.
I'm like, yo, how are you going to wash you're taking 10 minutes to wash do you do that?
I know my wife has something to say.
No, I'm letting you share.
No. This is really cool just to see the dynamic, because you're like, each other. You're like, oh my gosh, she's thinking about something.
She makes fun of my scarcity mentality all the time.
Jacob, we went back to where Jacob's parents come from, which is a little country called Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, Tbilisi. And I think your dad, I hope he's probably going to listen to this too, because he listens to everything we do.
My parents do too. I love my parents, and my mom doesn't get too mad because I kind of, like I said, I throw stuff at them. So feel free to go ahead, be nice though.
So they grew up really, really poor and in the Eastern Bloc, Russia. And his mom had to stand in line for bread at 4 a.m. for hours. And they had nothing, literally nothing. We went to where his dad grew up. It was rubble. And now they live a nice life in Los Angeles. They're safe, comfortably middle-class people. But to see where they came from is shocking. If you go to Tbilisi, Georgia, people don't have teeth, basically. They don't have. I don't know if I would say that. I mean, they have teeth, but they don't have. You can tell, like they don't
stereotype an entire country with that.
A lot of them. There's a lot of poverty, and they don't have dental hygiene.
Right.
And so a lot of them are missing teeth and
stuff that we take for granted, for sure.
Yeah.
No, like when I go to the little town Alamos, I've been there a few times, and my mom, like all the family members bought up like a neighborhood, and there's still people there. Like if we go there, there's literally cobblestone roads. And she'll be like, oh my gosh, this is where my great grandma lived. And this is like I don't know, Gordo's house. Like they got little nicknames and stuff for each other. And it's kind of cool to see. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so different. They're just kind of sitting in a chair all day. Like the windows are open because there's no AC. It's such a different life than what we're used to. Like I have this fancy ring light and webcam, and you guys have a nice camera and like good setup, right? So we can't blame our parents because that's the kind of environment they came from, but it's just interesting to see how that shapes. I constantly have to like teach myself, no, Chris, you're thinking differently than your parents. You're going to the next level. Stop worrying about those things. Yeah. And it sounds like we all have that inner work to do.
You can talk. You clearly have something to say.
Like I'm telling your story for you.
You may say.
He's like, wait, that's not my story.
You can talk about
your approach to dinnerware, tableware.
You can talk about whatever you want.
My girlfriend and I have these little things too. I'm like, just why are you using more plates? That kind of thing. Like we use one plate for every little thing, and now I got 10 dishes to clean. Why don't you just use the same plate?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a little scarcity minded because I'm a little lazy when it comes to doing those things. I'm saving myself time, right?
I don't need like 14 plates and 19 Tupperwares.
Good,
so you got one little thing of leftover. You got to put in a Tupperware. Use a Ziploc bag for God's sake.
That I could get along with, right?
We're a nice balance because I love to spend money. I love to shop. I'm not very realistic when it comes to budgeting, and Jacob is the opposite. So together, I think it's good.
It makes sense. It's a good balance.
We almost bought a new house. That was just like, I don't know if you call it COVID drunk or what, but
somebody had to put a kibosh to that. I'll let you guess which one of the two of us did
I wonder. Yeah. Well, it's good to have that kind of balance because it can go the other way where both people are spenders and you just can never stop it, or both people are savers and you can't enjoy a dinner out without being like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I have a good balance too. It's good to have that person in your life to give you limits when you need them or give you freedom if you are having a hard time doing that too.
Yep. And if we just use Ziploc bags, I think everybody would be happier.
The world would be a better place.
It's actually knives. He doesn't like to cut his chicken with a knife. He'll take the fork and he'll like
I kind of like that too.
Chicken breast. And
I did that the other day. I cut all my chicken with my knife and I gave the knife to my girlfriend. I was like, look, let's just use one knife. We don't need two knives. I'm just going to cut this and eat it in 2 seconds. So interesting how that works. What would
happen if you and Jacob went out to eat? Like he doesn't use a knife at all. Like he won't. Like, what would you guys do? You know what?
I exercise. I put a little bit of elbow grease behind the fork. I can get through anything that you can get through with a knife. You give me a roast.
That's impressive. I mean, maybe if you have your steaks medium rare, but I'm sure, does this actually, like this kind of fun bantering between you two kind of play into your business as well in terms of like, how much are we going to spend on ads and like marketing? And one of you tries to dial it down a little bit. I'm just curious to see if there's any like crossover there. I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like thinking of topics and guests or course ideas or coming up with questions for podcast guests, I mean, sometimes we bicker a little bit more than we should, but
I think that's what makes us real. In fact, we got complaints on our iTunes.
This
reviews.
Is when I think it was a fair comment. When we first launched the podcast, we weren't very good together. We were good separate.
I was also very stressed. I was very pregnant. Exhausted, COVID. We had a 5-year-old at home. But it's hard.
I guess the criticism was we were very critical of each other on the podcast, and maybe I did more interrupting than I should have. So we took that feedback and we tried to do a better job when we're creating our podcast. But we've never done a podcast or a show together. We did our own when it's just one person.
Yeah.
So having both of us there when our natural state at home is we're both kind of like sharp and witty with each other and bantering.
It's kind of like what old Jews are like. That's what we're like. But we've been like this since we met.
Like interrupting each other, like making fun of each other, throwing each other under the bus.
But I understand that maybe on a podcast, if people are listening to get value out of it, maybe they don't want to hear.
I feel you. Those negative reviews hurt, but they tend to help us get better. Like I remember I used to type notes and basically read my solo episode. Like I would try to make it a podcast, but I was literally reading. And one person gave me 2 stars and was like, look, bro, I like what you're trying to do, but this isn't an audio book, like it doesn't feel like you have energy behind it. And I stopped jotting down notes. I was like, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to come from the heart. I'll write a few bullet points down and my show's gotten better for it. So sometimes those negative comments, I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but like you said, it changed the future podcast where you're like, okay, I might interrupt a little less. Let's not banter as much on the show, that kind of thing.
For sure.
What I love about Be Your Own Boss is it's really allowed me to explore topics that I never get to do.
Right.
Generally, I write books about customer experience, and now I get to talk about being a working mom. Like I get to talk about women's issues and supporting women. We've had some big time interviews, and we'll continue to interview like big, amazing people. And like I interviewed famous author. I don't want to name her, but should I name her? I mean, I interviewed Rachel Hollis, and that was very exciting to me. We haven't released it yet. She's had like a tough month out in the world. So we're going to release it soon, but that was just like this dream, and Jacob produced it. He was totally behind the scenes. So he's also supporting me pursue things that I'm really passionate about. And so that's really fun for me. And I think what has been great about the podcast is you doing all the back end stuff, producing it, putting me on camera. I'm not an on-camera person. I'm introverted, and he's sort of forced me. And I think that's really good for me. So yeah. I think there's a lot of positive to what we've done in the last more than a year.
Yep.
That's great. There's a lot of growth happening there together as well in your relationship, in your business. So that's an exciting dynamic to kind of explore. And anytime my girlfriend and I, like we were putting furniture together when we moved here, and that's when we started arguing because like she wanted to put it together right away as soon as the box arrived. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we already put two things together, right? So we could see where some of the tension came up. I'm like, can we do this like at 3 days from now and batch it? Do we have to create every piece of furniture that comes in here? So it is interesting to see when you are working with your significant other, your spouse, some things get you riled up more than others, but that's how you learn about each other and you grow together and ultimately get to the other side.
It's the idea.
During COVID, I've been listening to Esther Perel's podcast, Where Should We Begin? She's a relationship expert and therapist. And I recommend everyone to go check that on Spotify.
Where should we begin?
Esther Perel on her YouTube talk. She's a relationships expert. And basically it's all about communication and listening, just like you listened to your girlfriend who she clearly felt the need to nest and like get the house set up right away. And she was getting anxious
seeing all the boxes everywhere. Yeah. I was like, dude, it's cool. The bed's set up. Like we're fine. We got a place to sleep.
So everyone has like needs and quirks they bring to the relationship. And it's just about like making room for the other person. And there's a lot of relationship books that show when relationships decline, it's usually when one person doesn't. And I don't remember the exact word or phrase, but it's like, if you didn't make room for her, like anxiety about the furniture, or you were just like dismissive. And I think that's when things get bad. Extra step of, even though I'm tired, I'm going to make room for you and I'm going to hold you, and the things that maybe are ugly.
Don't break our table.
Yeah. And that has been a learning moment because I lose my cool sometimes. Jacob loses his cool sometimes. Usually we don't do it at the same time. And when we do, that's bad. But I think that's so important that at least one person is calm at all times, because especially when you start to have little kids, it becomes really hectic and you never want your kids to see you lose your cool. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just similar with business partnerships in general. Like everyone's got different relationships and styles and personalities. And sometimes it's tough having two chefs or cooks in the kitchen, I guess is the saying, where you both have ideas, you both want to go a certain direction, and maybe they don't align all the time. So you got to kind of talk through it. Okay, let's go with your idea this time. Or what if we try this? Or maybe we can compromise, right? So that's probably another fun thing just to work through. But it's interesting just hearing your story and the challenges that you've overcome together, and even the personality differences. I mean, butting heads sometimes. It's natural. It's normal.
It happens.
Have y'all done the 5 love languages thing? Have you read the book and kind of done the quizzes? Service, like acts of service.
Like your girlfriend.
Yeah, my girlfriend, she loves actually quality time, because I do all these acts of service. I'm like, she'll complain about like one thing because I didn't listen to her because I was looking at my phone and I forgot what she said. Like she'll get upset, but I'm like, yo, I did the dishes, I took the trash out, like I cleaned the kitty litter. Like it doesn't mean anything to her sometimes. She wants the quality time, and for me, it's words of affirmation. So knowing that about yourself. What makes you feel good? I want somebody to be like, Chris, good job. Pat me on the back. That's all I need. I'm inspired for the rest of the day. Yeah. How about yours? Do you know?
I think it's probably a mix. I don't remember what all the 5 are.
I think it's like quality time, acts of service.
Quality time I think is an important one for me too.
Okay. Yeah. Quality time's big. playing some chess and stuff like that?
Yep.
Do you play competitively or anything, or you just love to play for fun? I'm just curious.
No, I used to play competitively when I was able to in San Francisco, but now COVID, a lot of the stuff's online. So once things open up again, I will continue to play more over the board tournaments.
He's teaching our 4-year-old.
Yeah. Queen's Gambit. I mean, that movie's got everyone playing chess again. I picked up a chessboard for the first time since third grade.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you guys on the show. I know we're kind of nearing the end of our time together. Is there any key nugget you'd like to leave the audience with, or any takeaways, something that's been transformative for you in your lives or businesses? I always love to see if I can extract a nugget or two at the very end for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of things that I've done that have been personally very effective for me.
Awesome.
That I've been experimenting with over the years. So I'd say there are a couple of things that I do. One is I don't do any meetings on Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays. Originally, I used to just take one day off, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to work on those days, but I don't like doing any meetings.
Yep.
It's because I found when I have a week that's filled with meetings, I tend to get a little bit anxious and stressed out, and it's like jumping from one call to the other. So that's been a rule for myself. No meetings on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays.
Okay.
Another thing that I do is I don't check email or social media till 4:00 each day. I have an assistant that I work with, and if there's an emergency, she'll tell me. So not checking email or social media until 4:00 each day, just once a day, has been very helpful. Also, disabling any social media or email notifications on my phone has been big. Not having a TV in our bedroom, I think, has been important. So we don't, just staring at screens all the time.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, you do watch chess at night before bed on a screen.
Well, while you're sleeping, you fall asleep.
He's watching Twitch, so
yeah. So I'm on Twitch.
That's not TV. That's strategy, right?
Well, but it's not like she's asleep. So while she's sleeping, she goes to bed at 9. I'm going to bed at 11.
Right. Because that's what's distracting. Like, you're trying to go to sleep and someone's watching Law and Order SVU or something in the background, and you're hearing gunshots when you're trying to go to bed. Like, that's very difficult.
So I think those things have been pretty effective.
Cool.
Making time for chess stuff, which is, a big hobby for me, has been pretty effective as well. So I think those things have allowed me to be more productive, more engaged, and more present in everything that I do.
Awesome. How about you, Blake?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple. When I first started keynote speaking, I was very nervous. I was very scared, intimidated. I didn't really have a lot of confidence. But one thing that kept me taking opportunities and being brave was the thought of, well, what if they gave this speaking opportunity to XYZ person in your space? And it's usually like an older man. So that, using my chip on my shoulder, or I would never want to give this to someone else, and channeling that, you're not going to take this from me. It sounds crazy, but it was this mental reframing to make myself braver and to keep getting up on stage. I'm a big proponent of having a growth mindset, and I channel because I'm a kind of sensitive, sounds horrible, but I'm a moody person. I'm not going to lie. And I use that energy and I channel it into more positive things. I run 4 miles a day. I've developed a strong speaking voice. I've got, last year I was rated top 40 female keynote speakers in the world.
Wow.
By Real Leaders magazine. That's coming from someone who used to look like they wanted to cry and her face would turn bright red just in a meeting with 6 people.
Yeah.
So if I can do it, anyone can do it. But I think those things is mental reframing to overcome your fears, just motivating yourself in quirky ways, even if you have to imagine giving your work to somebody that you wouldn't want to have it. And then also a lot of channeling negative emotions such as frustration, anxiety, and depression into something really positive. Those things have really helped me to become the woman and entrepreneur that I am.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. Because it's interesting to be able to take these negative emotions and channel them to something positive, create that chip on your shoulder if you have to, right? Like, you may not want to get up on that stage, but now that you don't want that opportunity to go to someone who may not value it as much, you're like, okay, no, I have to do this. So I do that for myself too.
My friends now too. I don't see them.
It's like friendly competition though, right? It's like, no. I don't want that person to win. I want to be the one to win. Even though I act like I don't care about winning, like we all want to win, right?
Yeah. I think when you just get started out, that's really helpful. Now I don't really need that as much, but in the beginning, I really had to coach myself hard and be hard on myself in that way.
Yeah. And we talked about it earlier too. Like, when you start to get more confident, you don't care as much about what other people think, because you know what you have to offer, you know that you can deliver value, and people are consistently paying you for this. So you're like, okay, I'm not surprised that they're paying me 10, 20K plus to speak anymore. Whereas that first time you were maybe like, oh my gosh, I'm getting paid 10 grand to speak. Like, this is crazy.
I feel like Larry David at the gym in this men's sauna. I'm just like, whatever, this is who I am. Actually, Larry David, he wouldn't be like that. That's not a good example of him. But I would be a man in a gym sauna, just not caring at the age
just
of 65.
Like whatever.
Relaxed.
It's my life. I get to do what I want now. Yeah.
If people are just tuning into the podcast now, they're going to be like, that girl's crazy. But if you listen to the whole podcast from Chris's beginning, then the joke.
It'll make sense for sure. Yeah. And where can our audience go to learn more about you? Obviously the new podcast, but feel free to drop any links, social media, and I'll put it all in the show notes as well.
Sure. Our website is byobpodcast.com, and that's where you can find pretty much links to all of our stuff. We also created a fun PDF, and the website for that is cheatingonyourjob.com. And this is for anybody who has a full-time job, who wants to be an entrepreneur, and we put a little guide on 5 things that we did to make that transition. So cheatingonyourjob.com for the PDF, and our website, BYOB Podcast. Our email, in case anybody wants to reach out to us, is morgans, morgans, @byobpodcast.com.
Cool. I will put all that in the show notes. And I love that domain name, cheatingonyourjob.com. That's so clever, because you're right. It feels like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I don't like my job. So I know
that's Blake's idea.
Very clever. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is getting to be creative. You can name it whatever the heck you want, and it makes sense. So
that would never fly like a corporate full-time job.
Yeah. The HR would take 5 weeks to review it and they deny it, versus entrepreneurship. Oh, I like it. I bought it. It's live tomorrow, that kind of thing. So Jacob and Blake, thank you so much for your time, for jumping on the show, for jumping on couples, business owners interview today. And everybody reach out to them. Make sure to check out their show. Of course, I'm going to be on there as well, and I'm looking forward to that. And we'll be in touch and talk here soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey everyone, Chris Bello here. Just wanted to thank you real quick for listening to the show, whether you're listening on podcast or YouTube or wherever it is that you may be listening. I wanted to make that quick offer about real estate help. I am in the real estate business. That is my main business, and how I make all my income and my living by helping others buy, sell, rent, or invest in real estate across the nation. If you have any questions at all, go to chrisbello.com/real estate. Again, that is chrisbello.com/real estate. I'd love to see if I can help you out in my markets. And maybe if you're in a market outside of the ones that I'm focusing on right now, I'd love to connect you with a real estate professional who can help fulfill whatever needs or services that you are requiring. So again, go to chrisbello.com/real estate. A great thing is, when I connect you with a vetted professional, if I'm not able to help you myself, is whenever a transaction closes, I'm actually able to get a referral commission. So that can be a great way of thanking me for my content. It helps to support the show, and it helps me to continue to spend time bringing on amazing guests, doing these great interviews, spending a lot of time on creating content, and making sure that I can bring you the very best information that you need to grow professionally, emotionally, intelligently, and in every single area. We're all working on getting better at everything. And so my focus and expertise is in real estate. I'd love to be the one to help you again. If you're not interested in that, no worries at all. Please continue to listen to the show. Make sure you leave a review. It helps so much in getting new followers and sharing the message. And thank you once again for being a listener. I'll catch you on the next episode.